Hi guys. So I'm Janet, Prue's daughter, and Mum told me a long time ago that she wanted a happy funeral. Actually, what she really said to me was, you better have fun at my funeral or I'll come back and haunt you. I'm sure it would be quite nice to be haunted by Prue and not in the least bit scary. She would never wish to haunt me at a time that was inconvenient or that was in any way going to make me truly worried or scared. I think at best I might just sort of feel a chill if I didn't use a tea bag twice or if I threw out leftovers. I think she really wanted a funeral to be a bit like a Shakespeare comedy. No small amount of revelry, some good music and dancing, a lot of wit and poetry, and an eventual triumphant happy ending after some plot twists. Well, I think we've got some technical plot twists today. And that would be much like her 90th birthday party, which so many people attended. Never in our wildest dreams did we anticipate that we would be farewelling Mum in this strange and unique way and not being all together to do so. I've always thought of Mum's side of the family and her upbringing to be a little bit like a Jane Austen novel. All those 5 Bennet sisters, Olive, Lulu, Dot, Millie and Prue Senior. But for this occasion, I've been reflecting on our Prue's true character. Prue did live up to her name and was indeed prudent and never wasteful. She could just as easily, however, have been named Charity or Hope or Faith. She characterised and embodied all those virtues. But what strikes me most about Mum is how genuine and consistent she was. Prue didn't so much enjoy teaching as she enjoyed helping other people learn. And she never gave up on anyone. In fact, I think she saw disengaged or disinterested students as a challenge. And she eventually wore them down with relentless and persistent niceness. As one fellow Kerikeri High School student said seriously once to me, it's just impossible to dislike your mother. If she could ignite in any student the love of a literary character, a quote, a play, or whatever was being taught, then those were moments she cherished. I'm sure Mum would not have considered herself to be a remarkable person at all, just another thing that made her remarkable. She is, to me, a great example of how one person can make a difference in this world. Quietly and without fuss, she achieved a lot in her life and made an impact on the lives of so many others. She lived her life with a gentle dignity, integrity, generosity, faith, and duty and heart. She is, for me, an example of what duty was intended to mean, not obligation, but a calling to serve, and what lived Christianity looks like. Everyone mattered to Prue, and no one was more or less deserving, interesting, or important in her eyes. She was the first to offer help and assistance to others at all times. She was generous with her time, her energy, her skills, as well as her modest shekels. Most importantly, Mum was never happier than when she felt useful. Every towel and apron she has mended at Rita Angus is testament to that. A proofreader, a sounding board, a peacemaker, a translator, and an adventurer throughout her life. Dad was indeed a lucky fellow, and perhaps he even knew it too. She was generous, we as children never wanted for anything and were indulged in activities like ballet, drama, music, and of course, good books. I remember a friend of mine's father proudly showing Prue and I a tour of his impressive modern new house many years ago. And when we were home alone later, I asked her how she had liked it. And she said, "Did you notice there wasn't a book in the whole house? None whatsoever. So cold and empty." Most of our family sayings are quotes from favoured books or plays. When my son Josh was around 8, he decided that it was time to try and read The Hobbit. I suggested he check and see if we had a copy in the bookcase. He came back having found a beautifully colour illustrated hardcover copy with the inscription inside that read, "To Joshua from Nana Prue on the occasion of his 1st birthday." On her return to Wellington, I once asked her on a cold, wintry day why, if she loved the tropics and heat so much, she hadn't considered retiring in Australia. This is one for the cousins. she said, "Oh, Australia is very, very nice to visit, but I could never live there." And I said, "Why, Mum?" "The vowels." For someone who was such a passionate teacher and academic, it always amazes me that she gave her full support to me leaving school after sixth form to study subjects like sociology and psychology and anthropology at university. And when the headmaster and a family friend, out of concern, I'm sure, suggested to Prue that she should really try and make me stay for a seventh form year, Mum said no. School subjects hold no interest for Janet, and she would be far better off going off to do what interested her. I jokingly say that Mum and I left home at about the same time. After Dad had died and she felt that I, being the youngest, was established at university, she felt free to take off herself again and go teaching overseas, this time on her own. Prue did what I call a fair trade in hot curries for English lessons around the globe. A currency and an occupation she enjoyed above all others, and one she undertook wherever she was, making lifelong friends doing so along the way. I recall visiting her when she was living and working in northern Thailand. When we were wandering around the city, we would stop outside some of the local shops and she would say, "Now be sure to buy something from this shop." And then we would pop in and she would introduce me to the shopkeeper. And while I was choosing something to purchase, they would then call out the whole family to meet me. And she would have been, of course, regularly giving English lessons to them all in her spare time. Mum was fortunate to have many happy years and live a full life. She got so much enjoyment from her travels and adventures, from her academic extramural studies, her teaching, her voluntary work, her family, her friends, her church fellowship, and her love of dance, literature, and music. And as the mini strokes and memory loss reduced her world somewhat, I referred to it as a diminishing round. It was a song she sang with grace and acceptance. She was happy with her life and her lot. I'm very grateful and have a heart full of thanks to the Rita Angus staff for the care they gave her, and to my sister Jess for how she's cared for Prue in these last years. And like Gordon, for Prue herself, our lives are richer for having known her, and if I could be half the person she was, I'd be better than I can imagine. To her I shall say, good night, good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow. Good night, sweet Prue, may flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. And when she wakes in heaven and asks, what tea is it? I hope God puts on a decent cuppa or there'll be hell to pay. I just want to add a few thank yous as well. Mum specifically requested Peter Franklin play the organ for her funeral, and in fact she asked to be put on ice until he was available. Her comment to me was that some people play the organ very well, but Peter is a true artist. High praise indeed, and we thank him for being here today and willingly playing for Prue. And she's chosen a corker piece of organ music which he's recorded for the end of the service. And we want to thank Jim for officiating the service and Vaughan for putting together the beautiful slideshow that you're about to see. Thanks, guys.